regarding the solid waste plan, and I'm going to ask the clerk to read the notice.
Columbia County has prepared a draft local solid waste management plan identifying the path to be pursued for managing solid waste generated in Columbia County during a 10-year planning period in an economical, environmentally sound manner that is consistent with the state's solid waste management policy. Columbia County will hold a public hearing at 6:30 p.m. virtually at meet.google.com for the purpose of presenting an overview of the draft LSWMP, at which time comments shall be heard. Pursuant to the revised Part 360 solid waste regulations as promulgated by the State of New York Department of Environmental Conservation, the public has 45 days in which to review and comment on the LSWMP. A copy of the draft LSWMP will be available for public review at the Columbia County Solid Waste Department and at www.columbiacountynY.com. Written comments may be received until April 23rd, 2022, and can be submitted to Jolene D. Race, Director, Columbia County Solid Waste Department, 401 State Street, Hudson, New York, 12534, or jolene.race@columbiacountynY.com.
Okay, thank you. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to Jolene Race to introduce Luann Meyer from Barton and LaJudas for the presentation.
Okay. As Matt stated, Luann is here tonight to give an overview of the draft local solid waste management plan. Again, we strongly urge anyone to submit their written comments to us. So Luann, I'll let you get started.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to share. Make sure I share the right one. All right. Excellent. So hopefully everybody can see that. Just give me a quick thumbs up. Okay, or nod. All right. So I'll try to be pretty quick, as if any of you have taken a look at the document itself. It has quite a bit of information in it, but I will say there's a lot of information that still needs to be gathered, and that's part of the intent of the plan. So as required by our Part 360 regulations, the solid waste regulations, we have to put a plan together and then make sure that we present it to everyone within the planning unit, and Columbia County is the planning unit for this plan. So here's a quick agenda of the items I'm going to cover, hopefully in a short presentation. So the biggest question is, what is the purpose of this plan? And that's to identify for a 10-year period, what are the goals and objectives of reducing waste generation, recycling more, and diverting more material. But also for that waste material that is being generated and needs a disposal option, looking for an environmental and economically feasible path forward for that. And in most cases, planning units today are continuing as they have for many years. But there's always an opportunity to do better and more to improve your solid waste program. And that's why it's great to look at these plans often enough to reassess if there's anything that should be done. So there's county framework, like I said, goals and objectives. And then this will satisfy the DEC's requirements for having a solid waste planning or plan. And most importantly, you are required to have a solid waste management plan if you are looking to get any grant funding from specifically usually the Municipal Waste Reduction and Reuse Grant Funding Program, which often will cover half of a recycling coordinator or cover 50% of the cost of equipment that's associated with waste reduction. So you need a plan in place in order to get that grant funding. So a little history for those that aren't familiar. 1988, there was the Solid Waste Management Act of New York State, which required a number of things that was really focused on waste reduction, reuse, recycling, that type of thing. But it also required counties or planning units to be established and to put together a plan for how they would manage their waste. So in the early 90s, many communities like Columbia County put together a plan that identified how they were going to manage waste. Things were, I would say different then. In the early 90s, recycling was just beginning to be a thing that was, readily available to residents. So, and multiple landfills. I mean, Columbia County had, 20 landfills at one time that were all closed to ensure that we had the safe disposal options. And we didn't want to have every town have a landfill. We wanted to look more regional basis of landfills. And so that was what was happening more in the 90s. And those plans were 20 years. So in 2010, Columbia County did update their plan. They were doing great. And so all of a sudden, there's another 10 years that we've passed and wanted to update it again. 2017, though, the state did revise their regulations and what was required in all the plans. And so this is a plan written that is in compliance with Part 369. So some of those components that now are specified in the regulations, I'm going to get into a little bit more detail. But so simple enough, looking at the planning unit itself, identifying the number of towns and villages. What is each one of them doing? How is each one of them managing their waste? Is there partnership of potential opportunities? Taking a look, because if we don't know who we're dealing with, then it's going to be hard to deal with what material is being generated. Looking at it, obviously Columbia County is majority, 81%, 81% is rural, 19% is suburban. So we want to take a look at that too and how that impacts waste generation and getting material collected and brought to the necessary location, whether it's transfer station, convenience station. One change this year, or I'm sorry, not this year, but for the next 10-year planning period is that the town of Cannon will be included in the solid waste management plan. They had been excluded since the 1990s, but they will be included going forward. Numbers are extremely important. We want to understand how much waste is being generated. And when I say generated, that means all in, whether it's being recycled, composted, landfilled, incinerated, reused. What is that number? So it's a hard number to identify. And there is no community across New York State that has been able to track down every number. So we do the best we can. Community or the planning unit does the best you can with available resources to identify what is generated within the county, both diverted and disposed. So here's some quick stats. You may be looking at it and saying, oh man, 11%, diversion rate. So the diversion rate would be that 11% of the waste that is generated from residential and commercial institutional entities. 11% of that is diverted or which would be recycled or composted. Recycling being the bigger of the two. But I know at one point Jolene had asked me, where do you guys fit in? And you're not out of the ordinary. It's very hard, number one, to gather this data and to get an accurate understanding. And I'll give you a quick reason for that. It's not required, let's say a big box store of some sort, it is not required to bring their cardboard to your transfer station or convenience station. They can manage that all on their own. And that does not need to be reported to the county in any form. And it's not being reported if it's not going through a county facility. So to track that information down sometimes is difficult. So I believe there's a lot of, we'll say, leakage of information where materials are going outside of the county that aren't being captured in the data. So one of the goals of the plan is to find a better way to gather the data. Is that through identifying certain generators who are large generators of material and getting their information directly sent to the county for future reporting purposes. And I will say that the DEC doesn't even have complete data. We rely on mostly the data that DEC has. So program description, we get into a lot of detail on what are the transfer stations, convenience stations in the community, what are they accepting, what are the public. I don't want to go, there's a lot of detail in here on all of the different programs that the county does have. For instance, organic waste diversion, one item that we track, and it's just impossible really to track everything, and you don't want it to be an encyclopedia document. But we want to be aware of the events such as the town of Cannon had a rain barrel or compost barrel or backyard composting and rain barrel demonstration that they did recently. So those types of things, the solid waste department, knowing that can help share that information amongst the towns and be kind of that conduit of information of making sure that they're aware of things that other communities are doing that may be duplicated or replicated. DEC, wants to know that there is a bench that's available, the structure of how the solid waste department works, who's responsible. We also look at the finances with Columbia County. You do have, a private entity that's operating your facilities, and you're receiving funding from that. DEC in these reports wants to kind of understand that. They want to be able to see that it's sustainable, right? That the program's sustainable, there's money coming from somewhere. So really then the main focus of the plan is your strategies, your program strategies or implementation goals. And like I said, I don't want to take too much time because I know that if folks want to have any comments, they can make them. But there are a total of, I'm going to make sure, 15 different strategies or goals. Some may be as simple as promoting reuse programs and making sure that the website is up to date on getting information out there about different reuse. Other things, importantly and timely, is product stewardship framework, having an understanding of that concept, extended producer responsibility. There's state legislation right now. Well, I take that back. It's actually in the governor's budget for extended producer responsibility legislation for packaging and paper, which would require the manufacturer of those products to be responsible for the end of life, the recycling, the paying for the recycling of those materials. And that's something that I think has occurred throughout the years for electronic waste. Most recently, paint materials are being managed that way because the solid waste industry tends to be the catch-all, the solution where all of this material gets trickled down, yet they have no control over how it gets produced or how it's, how it's made or marketed that it could be recyclable. Let's see. So education is a huge component, always is, because every single one of these touches education. Improving this out, I've mentioned this in the beginning, improving the collection of data and figuring out a way that you can identify get more data. Some private sectors are often concerned. They don't want to provide that to a government entity of what they're disposing of, and the goal is to say, listen, we're not trying to catch you. We just are trying to get the right picture, a complete picture of our waste management and recycling diversion situation in our county, so we can better manage it. And then other items, the county local solid waste management law is one that I always encourage. And I believe the DEC wants to see that you're always looking at that to see if there are any improvements that can be made to the law. Columbia County has been proactive in that, and there have been modifications throughout the years to that law. There's many other planning units that the 1991 law is still the current law on the books. when it comes to recycling. So I know you can't read this, but this is the heart of the plan. It's all about how, if we have all these goals, we have these metrics that we need to meet, how do we get there over the 10-year period? So it really comes down to putting all of those goals into a schedule and being able to tackle them, 1 year at a time, to meet those goals. So just to give an example, the fourth one is increase recycling at county facilities. So, the first few years of the planning period, we want the county to evaluate the current procedures, put together a plan, introduce a plan, put together goals. Are there goals, metrics that you can identify for how much more recycling you want to do? And I understand that the county has already committed to that and doing additional, not that you haven't done recycling in your county buildings, but to reinvigorate it. Make sure that the education component, people understand what you can put in your container and what you can't, and that it's getting to the right place. I think this is my last slide. And then most importantly, projections. If we have goals, what do we match those against? And so with those diversion numbers, like I said, we don't have all the data, but over the 10 years, we hope to, the county will continue to obtain more and more information. And as those goals are put into place, the final goal is that more material will be diverted from disposal and these numbers will increase. They're modest right now, a modest increase. I have seen planning units that are higher than this, but sometimes I don't want to over project. I will be honest too, the DEC is not going to come down and be like, you didn't meet your 20% diversion rate in 2026, because this is supposed to be a living, breathing document as well, every 2 years. So even though this is a 10-year plan, every 2 years, you will report, the county will report to the department on an update of where they are with their program strategies and if there's any changes. And I lied because I forgot about the approval timeline. As it was mentioned in the beginning, this is the time when we're accepting public comments on the draft solid waste management plan. Once we get those comments, we will, the county will take them into consideration to make any changes that are necessary. And then we'll go through a series of back and forth, hopefully not back and forth, hopefully just a couple correspondence with the Department of Environmental Conservation. And they will either give their approval that all material or all of the required components are in the plan, or they'll provide comments on what they would like to see. But they strongly feel that it's important before they review it that the public is involved and has a chance. Prior to the last regulations, typically the DEC would approve it, the plan, approve it, then it went out for public comment. And it's like, well, what if the public has a better idea? We want to know what the public has to do or has to say prior to the DEC approving the plan. This is last. So as we've mentioned in the beginning, comments, you can submit them in writing to Jolene. Her information is also on the website, and that date is through April 23rd. And with that, I will stop sharing.
Okay, thank you very much, Luann. So I guess we'll, what we're asking is that you put all comments in writing because we want to capture the comments. But I will ask if any supervisors have any comments. Supervisor Holtling?
I actually had a question, so I don't want to put it in writing because Luann might know the answer, or Jolene. So when you have the stats, and I do understand the caveat that, there's so many variables, it's not necessarily comparing apples to apples. And although we weren't the highest for overall landfilled, Saratoga County at 69% and Greene County at 79%, and Greene County is right next door and a similar demographic county, and us at 93%. I'm wondering how much research was done through this process to find out what Greene and Saratoga County are doing differently from us. and how much of the findings for their lower rates of landfills that they're doing differently were then incorporated into our plan. Can you talk a little bit about, once you saw that those numbers were so low, what we did to look at why and how we incorporated that into our plan?
I want to make sure Jolene didn't want to say anything. Yeah, so we're always looking at comparison, but yes, there's definitely that caveat on those numbers because it just depends on how much information is available to them. If you looked at Green, which is next door, their percentage of diversion is 18%. Saratoga was 14%. So they're in the realm, like they're close, and there's too much information, too many caveats, I'll say, to look too closely. But yes, knowing that we've done plans for multiple, we actually did Greene County's plan as well. So we're aware of what they're doing when it comes to diversion. And it's very similar to what Columbia is doing. I wouldn't say one's doing it better than the other by any means.
Can I also comment on that, Luann? Isn't it also playing in the factor that we have Canaan's transfer station and also Carmen Barbado that's distracting a lot of the waste from our transfer stations, whereas Greene County primarily is the only gig in town, and county waste is also bringing their waste directly into them because they're contracted with them.
Yes, that is a great point. Yes, the private sector is definitely a difference in what data is available.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other supervisors? And Supervisor Adams? You're on mute, Supervisor.
Thank you. I just wanted to respond to that. Luann, I did provide Jolene with numbers from Canaan for both MSW and C&D, and I actually have a 10-year comparison if that's helpful, but I did provide the last year's numbers. And I sent some written comments to Jolene yesterday, and with the hope or expectation that we could see comparable plans, copies of comparable plans that were considered as part of this process. And she said that at the appropriate time, they could be distributed. So I hope you'll share those with us.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other supervisors? Supervisor Chimides?
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to speak on number 6, supporting organic diversion efforts and promoting backyard composting. So first, I just wanted to thank Director Race and the solid waste team for sort of getting our composting pilot off the ground. This is something that I hear so frequently from constituents wanting this to happen. And so there's a lot of excitement that it's starting to move forward. People are really think like this is the way that we're going to reduce landfill waste. It reduces greenhouse gas emissions. It also creates a renewable product. And it's one of the few processes that we can actually control as a county about where the waste actually goes and making sure it's being reused properly. So I'm really excited about this, as well as my constituents. And so I want to thank you for sort of moving this forward, but I would also like us to look at if there's ways to accelerate or expand the scope in the 10-year plan, if we could sort of reduce some of those first few years of piloting to sort of condense that a little bit. So I don't necessarily know the pros and cons, but I would want to take a look at what's possible.
Okay. And again, I just want to remind you, these comments, if you could put them in writing, it would be greatly appreciated.
Okay.
Anybody else have any comments? Any supervisors? Any supervisors? Any supervisors? Okay, are there any public comments? Any public comments? Any public comments? Okay, again, I'm just going to remind you, any comments, please put in writing. You have 45 days. And with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luann. Thank you, Jolene.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
flag today?
Well, I haven't brought it up yet.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. I'm going to call the Board of Supervisors meeting to order, so please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and please keep the residents of the Ukraine in your thoughts. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'm going to request that the clerk call the roll.
Basson,
Here.
Weigelt,
Here.
Holmes,
Here.
Simmons,
Here.
Stats, Adams,
Here,
Mettler,
Here.
Collins,
Here.
Riley, Eldridge,
Here.
Helsley,
Here.
Kirsten,
Here.
Ligonia. Supervisor Ligonia. Cousin,
Here.
Mia. Chimidas,
Here.
Mussman,
here,
Scalera,
Here.
Guzzi,
Here.
Holtling,
Here.
Morel,
Here,
Knott,
Here.
Skoda,
Present.
$31.56 present, $3.79 absent. We have a quorum.
okay, thank you. I need a motion to pay the bills, accept the treasurer's report, and file the minutes within the clerk's office.
Move.
Motion's, Ron Knott, second.
Second, Hoatling.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. So we have a couple of proclamations, and I just wanted to say in honor of National Women's Month. The proclamations are going to be read by two of our female supervisors, and all of the resolutions are going to be sponsored by our female supervisors. So with that, we have the resolution for National Women's Month.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman's proclamation, Women's History Month 2022. Whereas women have had a profound impact on Columbia County, having played important roles in serving in a number of vocations and professions that have shaped countless lives in our county. And whereas women have served as leaders in medicine, law, education, literature, art, health and human services, as well as elected officials on local, state, and national levels. And whereas March 2022 is National Women's History Month, with the theme being Women Providing Healing, Promoting Hope. And whereas this year in particular, we are reminded of the importance of healers and caregivers who have helped to promote and sustain the future, most of whom are women. And whereas contributing through major roles of combating the COVID-19 virus, the pandemic is finally loosening its grip on the nation, in large part to our tireless healthcare workers, largely women, who have served on the front lines of the pandemic. And whereas we celebrate their diversity, their commitment to their community, and the powerful example they set for all residents in Columbia County. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Matt B. Murrell, do hereby declare March 2022 as Women's History Month in Columbia County, New York.
Hey, thank you very much, Supervisor.
Thank you, Chairman.
The next is, I believe it's Supervisor Adams is going to read the Fair Housing Month proclamation.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. County of Columbia Chairman's Proclamation. Whereas the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development under Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, PE 90-248 as amended, administering all programs and activities related to housing and community development in a manner to affirmatively further fair housing, and Executive Order 11063, an equal opportunity in housing and non-discrimination in the sale or rental of housing built with federal assistance. And the Columbia Fair Housing Plan states further the long-term goal to assure that any person can obtain housing within their economic means in the County of Columbia, regardless of his, her, race, religion, sex, national origin, marital status, or physical handicap. And whereas the Columbia County Fair Housing Office works diligently to educate the public about fair housing laws and the opportunities afforded them regardless of race, religion, sex, national origin, marital status, or physical handicap. In doing so, they are enabling those who might not otherwise have the opportunity, the dream of being a homeowner, and the pride and self-esteem that comes with it. Now, therefore, be it resolved that all Columbia County residents are urged to learn more about fair housing practices, and be it further resolved that I, Matt B. Morrell, Chairman of the Columbia County Board of Supervisors, do hereby declare the month of April is Fair Housing Month in Columbia County.
Okay. Thank you, Supervisor Adams.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, I would like to request the clerk read the resolutions.
Okay, Resolution 101 of 2022 to 106 of 2022 by Supervisor Cousin.
Mr. Chairman, I offer these resolutions for adoption.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second, Collins.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 107 of 2022 to 114 of 2022 by Supervisor Mettler.
Mr. Chairman, I offer these resolutions for adoption.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 115 of 2022 to 124 of 2022 by Supervisor Mussman.
Mr. Chairman, I offer these resolutions for adoption.
I'll second, Guzzi.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 125 of 2022 to 129 of 2022 by Supervisor Eldridge.
Chairman Morrell, I offer these resolutions for adoption.
Second.
All right. Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 130 of 2022 to 135 of 2022 by Supervisor Adams.
Mr. Chairman, I offer these resolutions for adoption.
Second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution 136 of 2022 to 138 of 2022 by Supervisor Holding.
Mr. Chairman, I offer these resolutions for adoption.
Do we have a second?
Second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
That's it, Chairman.
Okay. Supervisors, you did a fine job. Do any supervisors have any comments or any business to bring before the board?
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to thank you for allowing the strong and powerful women that we have present on this board to represent the meeting tonight in honor of National Women's Month. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Mussman.
Yeah, I want to thank you all again, and I want to just remind everybody that women's rights are always at risk, and we need to protect them like we protect our beautiful mothers. Thank you for this great event featuring women.
Thank you. Any other supervisors? Okay. Ron, quickly, can you talk about the special meeting that's coming up, just so people know the date and time and what it's about?
Certainly. So we've been working on a proposal. We've been doing a feasibility study for a new OFA building out at the Commerce Park. And that project has expanded a little bit. It's been before Public Works. It's been before space utilization. But I've asked Ray Jakowski to put together a bunch of stuff. We met with OFA the other day. We brought Donnell out there, so we're involved Health and Human Services Committee as well too. So on April 5th, we're going to have a special Public Works meeting and invite the entire board. And it would be a virtual meeting. I think we decided on 5 o'clock. Is that right, Kelly? Or is it 6?
Chairman, did you say 5 or 5:30?
Let's split. Let's split the difference and say 5:30.
Yes. So yeah, 5:30 on April 5th. And we're going to have a presentation based on the feasibility study that will be completed by the end of the month, so that we can try and move that project ahead. So I encourage everybody to attend that. This is a pretty big project, and I would like everybody to be on board with moving forward with it.
Thanks, Ron. Supervisor Hoatling?
Yeah, I just wanted to check in. I know, Chairman, you and I had conversation, and I think you've had conversations certainly with Supervisor Nutt regarding a master facilities plan. And I just wanted to check in if that's dovetailing with the OFA project, or if not, what the status of that is, to be able to see everything, all of our needs laid out before moving forward with any specific project.
Supervisor Nutt and I have already spoke with Ray Jakowski, who's going to head up that master plan. Some of the feasibility studies that we've had done have been shared with Mr. Jakowski, and we are going to move forward with a master plan.
Great, thank you.
Chairman, Supervisor Adams has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor Adams?
No, I was just being tardy. I wanted to say that the Ever Home presentation took place yesterday at Columbia Green Community College, and it really was an extraordinary presentation. And I'm looking forward to seeing this program move through the county. And it is open now for members or subscriptions. So I hope we'll be able to get some more concise materials out to supervisors so they can take it to their towns. But it does, the run through yesterday was really an extraordinary event. So I'm happy to see it moving forward, and hoping that we can get out and let our communities become aware and participate in this project.
Thank you, Supervisor.
And Chairman, can we make a plug too for the housing committee meeting that's coming up? I think it's important for everyone to attend if possible.
Okay.
March 30th, right, Brenda?
Oh, the Housing Forum?
The forum, Patterns for Progress.
Do you want to announce that, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I was going to wait for Mike Tucker to get the information pulled together, but yeah, there is going to be a forum coming up. It is March 30th. I wasn't sure of the date, but
March 30th, 4:30 to 6.
okay, and we're going to highly recommend that all supervisors participate. Okay, thank you, Supervisor Hoatling.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, with that, a while ago, I had appointed a committee for the 250th, I guess, celebration or bicentennial celebration. And I was reminded by Bill Better, our historian, that most of the committee I appointed is no longer on the Board of Supervisors. So they retired. So I've got a new list. I've talked to certain members. So I'm going to appoint to that committee Ron Knott, Tim Ooms, Ray Statz, Brenda Adams, Holly Tanner, Sherry Franks, Adam Miller from our tourism department, and then Bill Better as a chair of the committee. So.
And does that mean that we'll start meeting soon, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he's already, and this is the county representation. There's also a contingent of town historians who are going to be involved as well. And I know, some have already been very involved. Okay, if there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, totally.
Second, Rick.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you all.
Good night,
Have a great night,
everybody.
everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.